Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to this presentation. Today we're going to be covering a relatively new product offering from Microsoft called SharePoint Premium. And this is really an exciting product. Those of you that have been around SharePoint for the last number of years, and I can raise my hand and count myself as one of the longevity users here of going on almost 20 years with SharePoint, will appreciate what Microsoft's doing here with SharePoint, because a lot of the capabilities and features we'll be talking about is around content finding, content management, and these kinds of things, which in the past, while Microsoft have offered capabilities around metadata to be able to classify and find information, it's been relatively manual. And what we're seeing now with SharePoint Premium is Microsoft is bringing together AI capabilities and applying it to the SharePoint experience. My name is Kurt Rowland. I'm a principal architect with Covenant Technology Partners. I have experience through the years, most recently around AI, Power Platform, on low code, no code, and Microsoft 365. I'm also an MVP. So here's my LinkedIn contact information. Please reach out, like, connect, or follow me. So we're going to start quickly by looking at some industry observations here. What are we experiencing with today's business challenges? I think we can all agree that content is the lifeblood of every organization. And this is true not just for artificial intelligence and for data analytics, but also, of course, for SharePoint, because SharePoint is first and foremost a content management platform. So, our ability here to be successful in the business climate is going to be somewhat dependent on our ability to maintain and manage well our repositories within SharePoint. These are just some statistics here. I believe these are somewhat dated, but the key takeaways here are around the number of documents being added per day to Microsoft 365. Again, I'm sure this number is probably low, 2 billion. Some stats here: by 2025, 80 to 90% of data growth will be associated with unstructured data. We're going to be focusing specifically on unstructured data within SharePoint in this presentation. So the question is, given the data growth here, how are we going to manage effectively this unstructured data? We know, again, these traditional methods that we've tried to perform in the past aren't working very well. And primarily, looking at this third item here, the reason why they haven't been very effective is because they've been requiring a manual effort. In other words, humans have really had to get in and actually manually tag and classify data, which of course is very time consuming and very expensive and error prone. So what's happening then within SharePoint here with regards to its capabilities, what it's currently providing, how it's used in organizations? We can see here that SharePoint is the hub, if you will, or the main foundation or platform that's used by Microsoft across a number of different products. If we look at the entree points within Microsoft 365, we see Office apps, we see Teams and Outlook, we see OneDrive, we see the Viva product set. The point here is that these digital experiences, as we're calling them here, right? I mean, even something like Stream, for example, while in the past they've started as separate platforms or separate products, what's happening is that Microsoft is funneling them all to work on top of SharePoint. So ultimately, when you think about how I kind of get at and access my content, SharePoint is a primary means or mechanism for doing that. And as you can see here, SharePoint is used both as a collaboration platform, both within, say, SharePoint and Teams. I have the ability to inform through things like communication sites and through things like Engage and Amplify, as well as actually deliver content. So the other, of course, big new shiny object here that's come on the fore here is generative AI technology. And we can see here that there are a number of challenges associated with those. So there are challenges with regards to detecting and mitigating risks in terms of controls and governance around artificial intelligence. And you can see here that the whole oversight and controller governance issues have many organizations concerned. Uh, there's demand, or I should say, maybe some pressure within organizations to use generative AI. Many organizations are using it in what we call a shadow AI type of capacity, where people are using, say, personal versions of, ChatGPT, but they're using it with corporate data, which are obviously risk areas. There are also big risk areas around the least privileged access configuration of the content. In other words, while organizations may want to use AI to process content, they're unsure of the data governance, the permissions and security of their content, and how well regulated it is. So this brings on the discussion of SharePoint Premium and how we're reimagining content services that are being offered on the SharePoint platform.
In the era of AI, the secret to getting ahead with your business is something you already have: content. Now, with SharePoint Premium, you can unleash the full potential of your AI-powered Microsoft 365 Copilot experiences. Boost productivity, keep content fresh, enable discovery, and support file collaboration. Optimize content value using AI-driven automation. And use powerful tools to manage the content lifecycle and control access. SharePoint Premium, where AI meets content management.
Okay, so again, the big message there is AI meeting content management within SharePoint. So let's start to unpack that here. So essentially, what SharePoint Premium allows you to turn on or activate a number of different AI services, and we'll be talking about these individually, that can support a number of different key activities within SharePoint. So this first one here is intelligent content management. So this is being able to understand what the content is without necessarily having a human, be involved in that. Improving the Copilot skills in SharePoint. This again would be bringing in some of the Copilot capabilities actually into the SharePoint interface. Being able to deliver value at scale with SharePoint Embedded. We'll talk about this a little bit. We won't be going into this in much detail in this particular presentation, but this basically is a version of SharePoint that has no UX to it. And so if you decide that you want to have SharePoint content management capabilities available to you, but you want to write your own interface, then SharePoint Embedded is a tool for you. Of course, we know that SharePoint integrates Microsoft Graph and so forth there. So that again is available. And then we've got secure collaboration with SharePoint Advanced Management, which again, we'll just kind of touch on, but that will be a future presentation. So overall, what SharePoint Premium wants to be able to do is govern or control the processing of content, the experiences in terms of how that content gets delivered, as well as the overall governance of making it a more intelligent content management platform. Again, the message here from Microsoft is we want to maximize content value with security and structure and prepare it for Copilot. So folks may ask, well, I mean, isn't Copilot something I could just simply use against completely unstructured data? Well, the answer is yes. The question is, what's the quality of the results that you get? So in other words, the more unstructured your data cloud is, your data repository, if you want to call it that, the more unstructured it is, the more you have to work at prompts in order to get the proper results. Flipping it the other way, though, of course, is the more that you can add structure to your unstructured content, the more effective your prompts are going to be. Okay, so the whole idea here is if we can improve or if we can enrich the content within the SharePoint experience with additional metadata and information that Copilot can use to process your prompts, the more effective your prompts are going to be in finding the information. So again, just to reiterate here, with SharePoint Premium, the focus again is on content management capabilities plus advanced AI. We're wanting to use content processing through AI in order to better organize your content to maximize its value, as well as optimize the critical business documents that might be involved in a process. Metadata can help us do that. It also simplifies management and security because rather than looking at merely a bunch of unstructured documents, you have documents that have more intelligence to them through metadata. So these are just some high-level kind of overview capabilities of what we're going to be talking about here, looking at just some main capabilities within SharePoint Premium. We can see here that we've got AI-powered processing of documents and content. We've got translation. This would be language translation of documents, auto-assembly of documents, annotations, the ability to, again, add and enrich your documents in SharePoint. So this first area is around document processing. Again, we're integrating the AI capabilities and the ability to tag and understand the content with that manual intervention using document processing. We've got signature requests through SharePoint eSignature. We'll also have full data extraction and analysis using lots of different document models. These will become available to you using SharePoint Premium. Dynamically add new columns through tagging. This is AI tagging. And then being able to extract text from media. This would be using the OCR service. So there, you may have examples where you have image-only PDFs, for example, that might contain sensitive information, but you really don't know because they're just images. But if you can apply OCR and extract the text from those images, then you can actually do something with that from the perspective of sensitivity, for example, determine whether or not those documents have sensitive information or not, and then process them accordingly. So if we just look at the business benefits, we can see that automated form processing and metadata extraction. This would be, again, you're bringing in either digital or hard copy documents into SharePoint. What you want to do is you want to process the documents in an automated fashion, and you want to be able to tag or enrich them with additional intelligence, right? So again, in the past, this has been a manual effort. Microsoft is purporting a 50% reduction in manual efforts using SharePoint Premium and the metadata processing. So the idea is that, yeah, there's going to be some manual intervention with regards to reviewing the results, but at least half of the work is going to be handled by AI for you. In terms of automatic content classification and curation, in other words, identifying, what kind of documents these are, they're looking at or purporting a 60 to 90% reduction in formal curation efforts. So here we're relying again on SharePoint Premium's ability to recognize what the documents are, classify the documents appropriately, do things like maybe assign retention or sensitivity labels to those documents and locate them in the proper location within SharePoint. So here's a quick overview of what we're going to talk about in this presentation. As you can see, we've got a number of different areas and sub areas within SharePoint Premium, and I'll just run through these quickly. So this first area is around content processing and assembly. So what we're talking about here is SharePoint Premium's ability to recognize either pre-built document types or allow you to design models, AI models around structured, free-form, and unstructured content. And we'll go into that in more detail. We've got content assembly, which is being able to do the reverse essentially. That would be to start with a Word template and be able to dynamically assemble a document result or endpoint based on marrying or matching the document template itself with data from a data source. We've also got OCR. We've talked a little bit about this. The example here is that you've got image-only PDFs, and you'd like to be able to OCR to be able to get the text information for that, to be able to, process that, know whether you're dealing with sensitive data. You may want to classify it and so forth based on the actual text that's in the document. This area of tagging is basically the ability to auto tag images and documents based on a term store. So those of you that have been around SharePoint for a while know there's something called the term store, and the term store in SharePoint is basically a set of terms. They're meant to be key terms that are used within your organization in order to tag and classify content, kind of like a data dictionary. So what you can do is you can use the data dictionary of the term store, and you can use artificial intelligence to automatically tag your documents and images according to the tags defined in the term store. We've got AutoFill columns. This is the ability to create AI-generated column content based on a prompt. Content query is additional querying or search capabilities that are added within SharePoint over and above the typical keyword search, which you get. This is a much more structured, like metadata or term search that allows you to be much more kind of pinpointing with regards to the data that you're looking for. We also have document handling. There's just a number of different areas, sub areas here in terms of how to better handle documents. We've got live annotations, merging and extracting PDFs. We've got document translation from one language to another, and then eSignature. These last categories here, I'm not going to be covering in this presentation, but we're looking at these for future presentations. One is in the area of governance. So there's a backup, archive, and SharePoint Advanced Manager management capability now that Microsoft is introducing through SharePoint Premium. And then lastly, there's SharePoint Embedded, which I talked a little bit about at the outset. Okay, well, how do you get access to these syntax features? You may ask yourself, well, I have SharePoint Online set up within my organization. I've got SharePoint licenses assigned through either Enterprise or Business Premium. So how do I get access to these additional capabilities? Well, there is a set of separate steps you need to go through. And so the way this works is you go through your admin center within Microsoft 365. You go into setup, files, and content, and you actually activate automated content processing with Syntex. And these screens are just some screenshots that kind of give you a notion of what these screens look like. But what you need to do is you need to go in and set up what's called a pay-as-you-go or pay-go billing within Microsoft 365. So ordinarily, we know that products and capabilities are licensed through per user, per month subscriptions. The Syntex or SharePoint Premium capabilities are all offered as what's called pay-as-you-go, which means it's all consumption-based. So you can choose which service. If you look at the lower screen here, you can see here it says document and image services, and there's a whole list of services here, many of which we're going to be going through in detail. But you can selectively go through each one of these and turn them on or off, essentially. When you turn them on, most of these are controlled by site. And so just because you turn a service on doesn't mean that anybody and everybody can use it, which of course you probably don't want to have happen if it's consumption-based. What you want to be able to do is you want to reduce or limit the capability by site or sites. And so when you activate these, you'll typically select one or more sites for which the service will be activated for. So the pay-as-you-go billing, essentially what that does is it allows you to set up a subscription and resource group within Azure. And the reason why this is important is because it allows you to monitor the subscription billing under all the services for SharePoint Premium under a single subscription and resource group. So if you want to set budgets and monitor your use, your spend, and so forth of these services, you would do that through the Azure billing management reports and screens. Okay, well, we're going to start with document processing. And this first area here is described as pre-built document processing. So when you look at how your different options for processing documents, you go from the easy and most structured to the more difficult and less structured. Let's just say it that way. Okay. So your pre-built document processing that you can set up, this is kind of a set it and forget it kind of model where you're basically limited to contracts, invoices, receipts, and sensitive information. Those are the models that you have. And you really can't modify these at all, which is, you could say, well, that's not necessarily good because I have documents that don't conform to that, which is fine. You just wouldn't use a pre-built document processing model. So you may ask yourself, well, how do I know whether I want to use a pre-built document processing model or whether I want to use a structured or semi-structured or unstructured model? Well, the answer is, well, you've got to test them with your content and see how well these models hold up. So, you may start with a pre-built document processing model. Let's say you have an invoice. So you may start with pre-built just to see how well it handles your invoices. If your invoices are highly structured and there's not a lot of variation, it may just work for you. So as you can see down below, what you do, or I should say to the side, is you add training files. So you have a model and you add training files with the model so that the model can understand the example files that you're giving it. And then what you do is you allow the model to work with your training data, and then you evaluate how well it's understanding your training data. So as you can see down below, what it will do is it will select what are called extractors. So based on the model, it's going to go through and say, hey, I think I found these kinds of information. And because we're dealing with pre-built document processing, these extractors are going to be fixed. They're going to be predefined. So there's going to be predefined extractors for contracts, predefined extractors for invoices and so forth. So in the case below, you can see it's gone through, it's identified these quote unquote extractors in the document. And you can see it's actually giving you the value that it thinks it sees in those particular areas. So the way this works then is through a series of training, evaluating the extractors, and then basically applying or deploying the model. You can then essentially take the extracted data and update metadata columns in SharePoint. So if we look at the screen above here, you can see that we've got basically a document library. Those are the rows that are listed. Those are the individual documents. The metadata columns go across the top, okay? So any extractor is a candidate for a new column within a document library. So let's say I was extracting name and I was extracting effective date and evaluation date and so on and so forth. I can promote that metadata that gets extracted as metadata columns to be associated with each document instance. Well, the value of that is once I have the metadata extracted, now I'm beginning to move to structured data as opposed to just unstructured data. Yes, I do have the document that I can refer to, but I also have some very, very key pieces of information that I've extracted out of the document that I can now use for classifying, searching, to help Copilot with regards to AI better identify the content. So that's the reason why we're going through these steps. The other thing too that I can do with the metadata is I can attach or define business processes off the metadata. So let's say, for example, based on the metadata value, I want to kick off a workflow. Well, I can do that now because I have a separate column of data that I can actually look at, as opposed to trying to scan a document and figure out what's inside a document. So these next screens here around document processing are kind of a variation of a theme here, right? So we looked at this earlier method here, which was basically just giving you pre-built document processing. Again, I only have contracts, invoices, receipts, and sensitive information. Oh, I should mention that the sensitive information model is quite handy because what it does is it allows me to easily identify PII and other sensitive kinds of information. And then note on this last bullet point here, I could do things like apply a sensitivity label based on the kind and quality of the metadata that is extracted from that sensitivity model. So if that doesn't work, let's say my documents are a little bit more freeform in nature, I can use a structured and or freeform document processing model. So here what I do is I use what's called a layout method. And with the layout method, I actually open up document samples, and I use a rubber banding tool to go through and actually select and tag the fields. So as you can see here, I would go in and I would upload, let's say, on this top screen here, the samples that I want to go through and have the model learn or understand. Then I would select in the document library, classify and extract. And then I would go through a training session where I would go through and I would tag fields and tables, and then I would train and publish my model. So in this example, I have much more control over defining the metadata areas on my forms. And I can actually develop my own data extraction or extractor names. So I'm not limited to the ones that were given to me in the pre-built models. I can go in and create my own names, create my own metadata, and work with that. So this gives me more flexibility. So with unstructured document processing, this is probably the most wide open method here. I'm not using a layout method at all, meaning I'm not going through and actually selecting regions of a document for it to go through and extract metadata from. I'm simply using keywords and phrases to try to identify what my metadata is or the kind of document this is. So of the three different methods, this one is one that most uses AI to determine or process what this document is. Because again, I'm just using phrases or patterns. I'm not doing any kind of geographical location on the document with regards to where to pull out data. Okay, so really the data can be potentially anywhere in the document, and I'm looking at more the semantics of the document, how the document keywords and phrases are related to determine what kind of a document this is. So just looking at a quick summary here, we can see here that to the far left here is completely unstructured, where we can automatically classify the document based on simply the actually let me stop there. What I'm missing here is unstructured, which is the bottom one here. Unstructured is based on keywords, phrases, or patterns. I don't really have that represented here in the visual, but again, that's the most open. And then working from the bottom up, you can see that we're going from unstructured to semi-structured to fully structured. So the big differences are whether or not I'm laying out within my templates where the actual data is and where I want it to be pulling. And whether it's always fixed or whether sometimes it's fixed in certain locations, that's the semi-structured, or whether I just simply need it to go through and work based on keywords or phrases. So you've got three primary ways of doing document processing, content processing, and classification. All right, well, moving on then to content assembly, we're really looking at doing the reverse in that with content assembly, what we want to do is we want to create a Word template. And again, typically, we're going to be doing this right within Word. We're creating a template, not just a DOC file, so to speak, but from that template, we're going to be adding fields into the template, something like a mail merge option. And the fields that we are selecting or defining can either be free-form, which means that they get entered at the time that the document is assembled, um, just as free-form text or values, or we're pulling data from a data source of some kind. And this is typically going to be from a SharePoint list. So if I had a list, let's say, that had customer name in it, and I wanted within the document, let's say the document was some kind of a proposal document, and I wanted to be able to pull a particular customer name from a list, I would reference that list and I would reference the customer name. And then when I filled the document out, it would allow me to select from that particular data source, and then it would paste in that particular company name into the document. These documents can be constructed manually, but they can also be constructed through Power Automate. Using Power Automate then to actually pull the documents together, generate the documents, and then ultimately come up with an output, DOC output. So this is really handy, again, if you're wanting to take standard document templates, you want to form fill or pre-fill those templates with particular data. You always want the same kind of data to be inserted in the same particular areas in the document, right? And then ultimately end up with a standard document deliverable. So now we're moving into tagging. So with tagging, what we're really, again, talking about here is we're adding columns of metadata to a SharePoint document library. And the column of metadata, the tag or tags that are being defined are going to be unique for that particular document instance within the document library. So basically what we're doing here is we can set up these taxonomy tags. We can set up to 3 tags. These are tag columns. And what we're able to do is we're able to associate the tag options to the metadata term store. So this works if you're using a term store. And again, if you remember, the term store is your data dictionary of frequently used terms within your organization. So if you have this set up, what you could do is you could define, again, up to 3 tags. You're going to go through and you're going to tell the document, tell the setup, the tag column here, you're going to tell it which metadata, which term store metadata values you want to use and what your default value is going to be. Okay. Now, what you're doing is you're allowing AI to go through the document, evaluate the document in the context of the term store, and apply the appropriate tag to the document. Okay. So yeah, I'm trying to think of a good example here. Let's say, for example, you have a tag in your term store which defines a document type. Let's say the document type is a proposal. And so proposal is a metadata value. So what you could do is you could set up a metadata column, a taxonomy tag column called type, and you could refer to this particular term store field called type, document type. And then what you would do is when you would run this, the AI would look at your document to determine whether this was a proposal. And if it was, it would put in the appropriate tag value of proposal in this particular column. Okay. Now, you typically have many more document types in this example, right? You may have an invoice or sales order, something like that, right? Um, and then you could have multiple columns. Maybe you have another column that's a department or something like that. And again, you might have the tag set up to try to look at the document to be able to classify the document based on department. Okay. Well, the idea here is rather than a person having to do this, we're letting AI make the determination and tag the documents with these tags automatically. The image tagging works very similarly in that when I upload an image, I can do the same thing. Again, what I'm doing is I'm referencing the term store here, and based on the values in the term store, I'm allowing the image tagging AI mechanism to tag the image using one or more keyword tags. Okay. So as you can see down below here, we have a column called image tags, and you can see here it's actually giving us multiple values in terms of what it thinks it sees in the image. Okay, so again, without having SharePoint Premium, it's like nearly impossible to do this. You'd have to have a person sit down and do this, um, but not easily done. So again, you may ask yourself, well, what's the benefit of doing this? Well, the benefit is that if you're trying to, let's say, look up images or search for images that contain particular kinds of things, objects, whatever, if you have a way of identifying the metadata that's in the image that you can search, that allows you to have a much better success rate in finding that image versus, I don't know, pulling the images up individually and looking at them one by one to try to identify what's in there, right? So this all comes together with the content query. The content query is an additional search capability that's added to the search bar. If you look at the top of the screen here, you can see that there is a built-in search bar in SharePoint, which we're all probably pretty familiar with. But with SharePoint Premium, there's an additional capability here where they click the content query dropdown. And when they do that, you can see that they have a number of different parameters that they can enter. They can still do a keyword search, file search, file name search, people, and so forth, right? But then you can also add other kinds of metadata to your search here, right from this drop-down box. Um, so this gives you a much sort of more accurate way of finding your content using the metadata as opposed to just simply relying on a single keyword search or phrase search to find the data that you're looking for. So this is kind of where the rubber hits the road in terms of the value of having metadata applied to your content, right? Having intelligent content is that now I can use a more intelligent search to find what I'm looking for. Okay, autofill columns. This is actually as if none of this other stuff was exciting. And I can get excited over this because, like I said, I've been around SharePoint for a while and these capabilities just haven't existed. But this one is really cool because what we're basically doing is we're being able to create a column. It's called an autofill column. But what I can actually do is I can use prompts, generative AI prompts, and you can see some sample prompts here off to the side. So these prompts are used to actually populate the value of the column based on the result of the prompts. Okay. So if we look at this first sample prompt here, the suggested prompt is, insert a question here. Okay, fine. Respond with a valid number. If no proper answer is found, respond with a default response. Okay. So the example might be, what is the total number of hours agreed upon? Respond with a valid number. If no proper answer is found, respond with not applicable. Okay, so this might be an example, let's say, of let's say it's a proposal or statement of work where we're estimating some number of hours on the proposal, right? So what this prompt is going to do is it's going to look at the document and it's going to evaluate the document based on the prompt, and then it's going to respond with either a number or not applicable based on the result of the prompt. Okay. Now you can see there are multiple column types that are supported: numbers, yes, no, date and time, choice, hyperlink, and currency. So not all the different column types are supported, but quite a number of them are. And so once you've created or defined the column, the autofill column, then what you do, as you can see down below here, there's an autofill on or off where you can essentially activate the prompting mechanism, so that allows SharePoint Premium to go through, engage the AI engine to go through and actually process those documents to update the metadata content. This is really exciting. All right, document translation. So let's say hypothetically you've got a manufacturing facility in Mexico. You've got others in the US, of course. And what you'd like to be able to do is you'd like to be able to automatically translate your standard operating procedure documents from English to Spanish. Okay, this might be a good way to do this. Again, what you can do is you can go into any document, you can select translate and select the translate target language, and then it will essentially create that target language version of that particular document. So again, avoids the need to hire translators to go in and translate documents. And this can be done real time, essentially, anytime that you need this. And again, you're not limited to Spanish. I think there are quite a number of different languages. I think perhaps over 100 languages that are supported now, that you can translate these documents into. So again, really truly amazing, because in the past you had to hire translators to go in and do this. eSignature. So Microsoft has developed and integrated the eSignature capability into SharePoint Premium. You may ask yourself, well, why did they do that? You know, there's DocuSign, there's Adobe Sign. Why did Microsoft feel like they needed to create their own eSignature? Well, the response there is that the feedback that Microsoft got from many clients is from a content compliance and data governance perspective. The preference is to have all forms of the document, if you will, stay within the confines of the tenant, as opposed to having documents float out of the tenant into some third-party system and float back in. So if you consider the way DocuSign or Adobe Sign work, essentially the documents get pushed out into these separate systems, and they're managed in these separate systems and through an envelope until the signing session is complete, and then versions of the document then come back into M365. And clients indicated, well, no, we'd really like to have everything stay within M365 from a compliance perspective. So Microsoft has created the eSignature capability. Again, fairly straightforward. You would just simply go through and you'd select, as you can see, a document from a document library. Once you open the document, you just simply indicate the particular fields, the eSignature fields. Again, typically you're talking about dates and from signature to signature pieces of information or maybe initials. You indicate, who the individuals are that, you're routing the e-signature, the document, the e-signatures to, and then the individuals are notified from within, by the way, the M365 platform. So what that means is that any parties that you are performing e-signature with have to exist as external users within the Microsoft 365 environment, because everything stays within M365, nothing floats out. right? But assuming you do that, again, very similar to Teams, when you invite people as external users or guests to Teams meetings, right? It's a similar kind of idea. But again, the whole process is handled within M365. As you can see below, there's a screenshot here of the Teams approval application. So as it currently stands, you can monitor the status of your eSignature approvals through the approval app in Teams. We talked a little bit about OCR, and again, the benefit here is allowing you to create or extract either printed or handwritten text from images and documents. The big value here is that since you're able to pull textual information out, you can then apply governance and compliance or sensitivity analysis on that content because you can actually deal with it. When it's bound in an image, you can't really do that. You could say, well, an image with sensitive information on it that was handwritten, for example, I don't really know that that's sensitive because it's in the image, right? Well, with OCR, you can actually extract that information out and then be able to process it properly within your organization because you have access to the text. Okay. The OCR does support a wide range of languages, and again, quite handy with regards to your governance and compliance requirements. These next few are really little kind of additions to the way you might handle things like PDFs within document libraries. So with annotations, you have the ability to annotate right on top of let's say a PDF document, for example. You can use these pen tools and so forth to actually annotate that. The annotations get stored along with the document in SharePoint. Again, allowing you to better collaborate even with non-Office documents. And PDF handling is also available through SharePoint Premium. This is just simply allowing you to merge and extract or separate or divide PDF files. There may be many times where you want to do this for content management reasons. Create a single document or split them out into separate documents. There may be situations where, documents may have, let's say, sensitive information in a part of the document for whatever reason. You want to be able to split that out and handle that differently. So again, they're kind of efficiency tools now are just built within SharePoint Premium. All right. Well, we've pretty much covered all the main features of SharePoint Premium that we'll be covering today. I would like to close with some information here on an assessment tool that's available. Microsoft has a 365 assessment tool that you can download, and you can actually run it against your M365 environment. One of the nice things about this is that it will go through and it will evaluate your environment based on how things can be improved using SharePoint Premium. So it will help inventory, how your content, how your libraries, how your metadata is being used within your environment, whether or not you're using things like retention labels, library sizes, and so on and so forth, whether or not you're using syntax models, what could be good candidates for syntax models, and so forth. So it's a free tool. You can use it to run against your environment to just kind of get a current state and use that as a basis for determining how or where you might benefit from using SharePoint Premium. This is just a quick breakdown of the pricing for some of the services that we've talked about here. Again, these are, as I indicated, pay-as-you-go or consumption-based services. And again, they're monitored through an Azure subscription. There we go. And so, if you want to see what your usage is, you'd actually go over into Azure Billing to determine this. But Again, as you can see here, these are all just transaction-based pricing. And a transaction is typically defined as the actual specific use of the service. So let's say AutoFill, right? AutoFill columns is 5 cents per transaction. So if you remember, there was a little toggle on that column that allowed you to run the AutoFill. So if that toggle got turned on for column and it actually went through and ran the prompt against that particular document to produce or update that autofill column, that would be defined as a transaction. Let's look at image tagging, okay? So again, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to have the AI evaluate against our term store and correlate one or more terms to the objects in the image. So each time that runs, okay, we're looking at $0.001 per transaction. SharePoint eSignature, each time I use SharePoint eSignature, that's $2 per transaction, and so on. So this gives you just kind of a rough breakdown. Again, this pricing is as of September 2024, so could change. It is all published though. I would also mention that Microsoft is offering a promotion right now through June of 2024 that allows you to sign up and use SharePoint Premium for free for a limited number of service types and transactions. So, they may give you a certain number of transactions, let's say based on how a transaction is defined, for free. So I don't know, let's say hypothetically, they're going to give you the ability, let's say, to process, I don't know, 100 image tag processes, for example, right? And this is just to give you an opportunity to kick the tires and evaluate SharePoint Premium. So as we're closing here on the presentation, my call to action here would be that we do plan on setting up and running future deep dives. So I spent time going through really most of the capabilities in SharePoint Premium at a very, very high level to give you a sense for the features and benefits, let's say, of each of these. But the plan is to go into a much deeper dive on each one. So for example, we're talking about content processing. We'll actually go through demo sessions and show you actually how to set up a model, how it extracts the metadata and so forth, right? So look for those. I invite you to attend those. Would also like to invite you to sign up for the SharePoint Premium promotion to allow you to actually begin to work with the tools and see how it might benefit you and your organization.